Good morning. It's Thursday. It's a Thursday morning, and that means it's time for Scott Ritter and I to talk about all of the crazy things that are going on in this world. Let's talk. Good morning, Garland Nixon and Scott Ritter here. Before we get started, let me say this. Well, for starters, don't forget everybody, scottritter.com is Scott's website. So go there. You can keep up with everything Scott's doing. And of course, if you're able to, please make sure you support Scott with contributions to keep his work going, and share scottritter.com on all your social media platforms. And of course, you see everything scrolling across the bottom, Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee and all that stuff, and PayPal. Same goes for this. Make sure also that you share this feed on all of your social media networks. As you know, this stuff gets tamped down and shadow banned and banned outright and all that stuff. All right, let me show you two quick articles before we get going. Article 1. Look at this. Pentagon open to nuclear response following Putin's threats. Hooray! The Pentagon's open to a nuclear response. Well, that's good news. We wouldn't want the Pentagon to be closed to a nuclear response because, God forbid, the lives of all human beings could needlessly be saved. And we certainly want to stay away from something like that. Let's go to the next one. Here we go. 1 second. And this is another interesting one. Okay, I see what's going on here. There's a screen.
The first ever
All right, if
three-row
I can
Mazda
possibly
CX-90.
stop. Oh, here we go. For God's sake. Okay.
I like the car.
Yeah, but if I could ever actually get... Okay, here we go. Nostradamus rival tells Biden to resign after missile strikes on Russia shows he's not competent. A top pollster, Nate Silver, who turned out to be more accurate than the Nostradamus of U.S. elections, which is Alan Lichtman, which I know Alan Lichtman. I've had dinner with him and his wife, Karen Strickler, before in their home. I could talk for a while about Alan Lichtman. He's a nice guy. He was wrong, but maybe I'll do a video to talk about that. So bottom line is, he's saying Joe Biden's competence, question his competence, Nate Silver. And he specifically said, hey, for God's sake, he says, the sudden escalation in the Russia-Ukraine war after Biden long instructed Kiev to hold back has sparked accusations that the lame duck president is allowing World War III to start ahead of Trump's entering office. Well, here's the thing about it, Scott, before I throw it to you. And that is, I don't for 1 minute think that Joe Biden, there we go, that Joe Biden is a guy, that Biden just himself is the one that individually decided to do that. Not that I don't put it past him, but I do know that Tony Blinken, that the lunatic here at Starmer, that these real fascists, it's time to stop calling them neocons and call them what they are. These fascist Nazis now have gotten together and they know they're in deep trouble. I think also, Scott, they fear if anybody starts investigating these people, the whole gig is blown. The American people will be shocked to their core should they find out what these bastards have been doing for the last 4 years, and they know it. And I think they're like willing to turn over the chessboard. Scott Ritter.
Well, I think there is real reason to question the cognitive capabilities of the president of the United States. He's not impressive at all. And, we are talking about one of the most complicated national security problems of modern history, the unraveling of NATO. Wherever you stand on the issue, I can sit here and blithely say, I want NATO dissolved. Well, it ain't going to happen on its own. There's a whole history there. there's relationships. $1 trillion defense budgets are linked to it. Money, power. The same thing with nuclear weapons. I can sit here and speak about the imperative of disarmament. Well, it just isn't going to happen on its own. And these are complicated problems if we're dealing with a political singularity. But here we are dealing with them in a moment of political transformation, not just transition, but transformation. There was a vote on November 5th for radical change. And I think what we're seeing right now is that, and it was interesting. I just so the people know, Garland was on time today. I was not. I was chasing a dog that got away in a rainstorm. So I was, but once I got the dog corralled and back in my car, driving home frantically, trying to get here on time, I was listening to the local WAMC is the radio channel. It's an NPR-like public radio station, very, very progressive, very liberal. And they had this show called The Round Table. So I was listening to them, and they have always, whenever somebody talked about the deep state during the Biden, that there is no deep state. This is a democracy. It functions as this is conspiracy theory, etc. But now, as they're talking about the potential dismantlement of the establishment by a Trump administration, they're suddenly saying, well, we have the deep state to fall back on. And I'm like, you're the same people that said there wasn't a deep state. But they're there, but they're so out of touch with reality. But what I was going to bring up is that they are scared to death. The deep state, the establishment, is scared to death of what Trump may do come January 20th. And the deep state has hijacked the United States of America. That's where we're at right now. This is not a nation where a president is directing. I think Joe Biden is put into a corner. I think at the appropriate time, Tony Blinken may come in and whisper in his ear and say, Mr. President, do you concur that we need to move decisively on Ukraine? I'll take that as a yes, and off they go. We know that in September, the Department of Defense was not in favor of using ATACMS. We know that Lloyd Austin in Ramstein, with Zelensky present, said this will not change any outcome of the war. This war will still have to be settled through negotiations, and I'm just not going to support this. And we know that Tony Blinken was working overtime to try and get the president to sign off on authorization. We know since the president backed down in September that the British, NATO, France have all been pushing very aggressively to get the United States to change its posture. And after the election, that the Tony Blinken has been working with these same people to Trump-proof NATO, to Trump-proof the war in Ukraine, so that when Trump comes into office on January 20th, NATO and Ukraine will be so deeply intertwined that there's no changing the policy. Trump can't change it. The deep state will have captured Trump as a fait accompli. That's what's going on here. And so instructions were given to authorize the ATACMS. What they did, it appears, is that NATO and Tony Blinken have decided that they're going to implement Zelensky's 10-point peace plan, his victory plan. The first phase of the victory plan is just what happened, to cut him loose and let him use these American, British, and French-made weapons, the ATACMS, the Storm Shadow, the Scalp, to strike targets inside Russia. And they went forward because they believe that Russia is bluffing. They believe that Putin is bluffing, that Putin will not do anything. And even some Russians, I remember in certain Russian channels, the Russians are like, the ATACMS is nothing. Putin will just ride this one out. And I'm like, I don't think so. One of the reasons is that Putin specifically said that if these missiles are used, it's an attack on Russia by the nation that owns the missiles. So when the ATACMS is used, it's the United States attacking Russia. Putin doesn't ride that one out. I'm sorry. You don't commit to this and then say, it's not a big deal. America attacking Russia, it's okay. Because the next step is for NATO to extend its air defense umbrella over Ukraine. This is part of the 10-point plan. Understand what's happening here, ladies and gentlemen. Zelensky's 10-point victory plan is being implemented in full, stage by stage. So now if Russia had done nothing, NATO would extend its missile defense shield. And this is inclusive, by the way, in Poland and Romania, of Aegis Ashore, the Mark 41 Aegis Ashore system that's been put in place that we ostensibly did to protect Europe from Iran. But everybody knows it was in there to go against Russia. It was just activated, and Russia just said, "Oh yeah, that's on our target list too now." That's the fact. And then once they extend the air umbrella, guess what comes next? Airplanes. Now we have a no-fly zone. And after we have a no-fly zone, we have boots on the ground. First, they started in the West, then they moved. And by January 20th, NATO is fully involved in Ukraine. Ukraine becomes a de facto member of NATO, and Trump is faced with that reality, and you can't untangle that. That is a Gordian knot that's not going to be unraveled. And they believe that Trump doesn't have the mandate to just cut that Gordian knot. So that's the direction they're heading, to call Russia's bluff repeatedly so that come January 20th, there is a fait accompli that Ukraine and NATO are forever attached and it can't be undone. And that now drives the reality of Trump's interface with Putin. That's what's happening here. And this would have led to a nuclear war. I remember when I've said in the past, when I ran Kamala Harris's game plan, which is this game plan, but more slowly rolled out, within 6 months to a year, every time I ran it, I got a nuclear war. It ended in a nuclear war. What Biden has done is compressed it now up until January 20th, and left unfettered, none of us will survive until January 20th because there will be a nuclear war. The interesting about this is that Putin just signed off on the new Russian doctrine. And now a rear admiral named Buchanan, who should be fired, by the way, I'm just saying, because who the hell is he to inject anything into this politicized environment? This moron in command, of strategic command, those are the people in control of America's nuclear. He says, no, America's ready for a nuclear exchange with Russia. We're ready for it. We believe we can have a nuclear exchange with Russia and win and prevail. Because remember, it'll be a nuclear exchange in which we come out ahead. What the hell kind of Cheerios was he eating this morning? Because first of all, if there's a nuclear war, none of us survive. I'd like to ask Buchanan how he thinks he's going to survive the RS-28 Sarmat. Not one, not two, not three, not four, but about 40 of them coming in, each one with 18, 500 kiloton city killing nuclear warheads. But then remember, there's the Bulava missile coming out of the Russian submarines. It's a Trident equivalent. It'll come in and take things out. You've got the road mobile Yars coming in with 3 to 4 missiles on each. How are you going to survive that? Oh, and there's Poseidon. It'll just go off outside the East Coast and flood every city, take out the world. Buchanan should be fired. I mean, if I were the commander in chief, unless I ordered him to say this, if he went out there on his own during this extraordinarily sensitive time and make a statement like that, I'd have fired him because he literally is playing with all of our lives with that stupidity of that statement, that the United States is prepared to engage in a nuclear exchange with Russia, which we will win, and we will, of course, hold on to sufficient nuclear power so that we can continue deterrence. Hey, dingbat, how did deterrence work if you had a limited nuclear exchange with Russia? It means it didn't work. The stupidity of this. So we've got idiots in the United States government that are saying we can win a nuclear war against Russia. We're ready for it. We're ready to do it. We're ready to tango. Let's go. And that, then you have, if you're the Russians, remember, we have to look at this from the Russian perspective. Now you have to take a look at Biden's aggressive behavior and say, is he trying to call our bluff or is he trying to provoke a nuclear war? Two different things. The bluff is, I don't believe we're going to have a nuclear war. But now you have Buchanan coming out and saying we're ready to win a nuclear exchange with Russia. And then you look at Biden's actions or Blinken's actions, you go, they're provoking a nuclear war, which now changes my posture, which now means, okay, it's going to happen. Let's go.
You got to strike first.
Yep, bingo, and they will. So now we look at all this, and this is where the Americans need to start to appreciate Vladimir Putin. Everybody expected Russia to respond to this, including me. I thought they were going to hit Kiev. And the Russians, being the trolls that they are, put more airplanes in the air yesterday and flew it towards Kiev than had ever been assembled before. And the United States was panicking, closing the embassy, everything. And then the planes just turned around. And then last night, Russia did something. This is where you people need to wake up and listen to what I'm about to say. For the first time in history, an intercontinental ballistic missile has been fired in combat. For the first time in history, an ICBM capable missile, because the parameters under which this one was fired make it an intermediate range missile, but the RS-26 Rubiège, which was what was apparently used, has always been one of those missiles that, depending on warhead configuration, could either be classified as an ICBM or an INF capable system. And that's why the Russians didn't field it back in 2017, because they would have had to commit it one way or the other. Is it a prohibited system under the INF treaty, or is it going to be configured for ICBM use only? And the Russians looked around and said, America's causing problems with the INF treaty. We're going to hold this thing back in reserve here and wait. And sure enough, 2 years later, Trump pulled out of the INF treaty. Putin at that time said, but we're still not going to deploy INF capable systems unless the United States deploys INF capable systems to Europe first. We did that last spring. We sent INF capable systems to Europe, participating in a NATO exercise. And then what Putin did is he said, fine, started production of the Rubiège, the RS-26. Votkin's machine building plant, used to work there. Based upon what I know about that plant, I would assess that they have the ability to produce 6 to 8 RS-26s per month. They started in July. We're looking at between 36 and 40 Rubiège operational now. One of those was fired last night towards Dnipropetrovsk, Dnipro, depending on whether you fly the Ukrainian flag or the Russian flag. Now, this is a nuclear capable missile, but it also has the ability to be outfitted with conventional warheads. The thinking was based upon the data that was being collected back in 2015, 16, 17 during tests, that a conventional package would be 3 Avangard hypersonic warheads with a conventional package. The Russians did something last night that I think probably took everybody by surprise, including the U.S. intelligence community. And the reason why I'll say, including the U.S. intelligence community, is that the Russians haven't been flight testing this missile. It's already been flight tested back in 2015, 2017. It was ready to come on operational status. The Russians just hit pause. Now the Russians are producing it, but there's been no new flight tests of this missile. And so in the meantime, Russia developed a new warhead package. And it's an interesting warhead package because it is a MIRV, multiple independently retargeted vehicles, 6 of them. But each one of these apparently has 6 large submunitions. So what happened is the Rubiège gets fired. It only takes 5 minutes to fly from Kapustin Yar, where it was, to Dnipro. It releases its 6 warheads, and they come down and release 6 submunitions each, and they blanket this factory, took it out. I mean, we haven't seen the damage yet, but I'm guessing that that the Yuzhmash machine building plant is no more. That's the Soviet name. The Ukrainians renamed it. It's a ballistic missile production facility. Ukraine's been bragging about producing its own ballistic missiles, including increased range of a version of the Neptune missile that was used to sink the Moskva cruiser earlier. Well, if they were producing them at UseMash, they're not producing them anymore. Just a little aside, just a little, I guess, arms control humor. Vodkinsk, where the Rubiej is produced, back at the end of the Soviet Union, was in competition with UseMash over, funding and everything. So Vodkinsk and UseMash, the Nadarazi machine building design bureau, was against UseMash competing. And last night, Vodkinsk won because the Rubiej took out the former UseMash plant. But that's a little arms control humor. But the thing here is that by using this system against Dnipropetrovsk or Dnipro, that leaves Russia one more escalatory step. See, if Russia had struck Kiev and taken out Bankova Street, the next escalatory step would be to strike Europe and NATO. Putin has shown that his bluff has not been called. But just in case Ukraine and the West didn't get it, there's one more escalatory step built in where he will take the Rubiej, maybe with a different warhead package, and strike Kiev. And at that point in time, if his bluff isn't called, if people don't think he's bluffing, the next step will be a conventional strike against NATO targets. That's what I believe. And at that point in time, now it's NATO whose bluff is being called. Is Article 5 really in effect? Will it really come into effect, et cetera? And if it does, then kiss your wife goodbye. You're going to die. And this is the point I want to make to everybody. There is a very good chance. I mean, I've been saying this, and everybody's like, Scott, stop. You're just panic mongering, Scott. Really? An ICBM was fired last night for the first time in history. An ICBM, nuclear capable, fired in a signal by Russia that this is the weapon that we're going to use to kill Europe. We'll kill Europe conventionally first, but if Europe wants to die in a nuclear holocaust, we'll do that as well. Guys, we are so close to this being it, game, set, match, because some senile, dementia-ridden president isn't in control. The deep state has taken over, and they're launching a coup against the American people. The American people voted for something on November 5th, and what they're getting is something totally different. The American people voted for a president who said, I don't want this war in Ukraine to go on. A vice president who said, I'm willing to shut off all the money. And both of them who committed to a policy of preventing nuclear war with Russia. That's the direction the person who won the election and won the mandate said they want to take this country. And now we have a lame duck administration hijacked by the deep state saying, no, we don't care what the American people said. We're going to play this very dangerous game of calling Putin's bluff in the belief that Putin is bluffing. Well, last night he showed that he isn't bluffing. Now, there may be people who say, well, because he didn't use nukes, he is bluffing. I wouldn't push it, but this is very dangerous. I mean, I'm at the point where I'm almost exhausted trying to warn the public how dangerous this is. But guys, you're going to die. If this doesn't change, if this is the direction it's going on, you are literally going to die, and you may not see Christmas. Hopefully you'll see Thanksgiving. But I'm telling you right now, we are on the fast track to hell. This could happen at any moment. What happens if Biden says, call his bluff today? Don't let this sink in. Don't allow this to have time to go on. The deep state saying, got to move, got to move, got to move, got to move. And so Biden says, unleash everything. And they go in just to see what Putin's going to do. And then Putin hits Kiev. And then what? Well, he's bluffing. Poland, next time they fire missiles, we want you to fire your missiles at them. We want to extend the NATO defense shield into Ukraine, as Zelensky's been asking, part of his 10-point victory plan. Then Russia starts taking out NATO air defense. Now that's an attack on NATO. And now we got a nuclear war. Hey, guys, this could happen very, very quickly. This is the danger of this. We are literally in the last moments of humanity unless something changes. And that change has to come from NATO, from London, and from Washington, D.C. And there's no indication that they're going to change.
Here's the thing, too. There's the only thing, because I sit there and I look at it, one of the things I think is this. Look, these people are cornered, and they know, man, people have no, I'm convinced of this. Years ago, when I first started looking into Russiagate, I said, this is an operation. It is an intelligence operation. This is not an investigation. It's an intelligence operation. It's a coup attempt, right? And I said back then, if people had any idea what was really going on in Russiagate, it would shock the conscience of the American people. And I'm convinced of that now, even for what I found out. If people had any idea what was going on in the last 4 years with this administration, it would shock the conscience of the American people. Let me add this. Based on what I saw of Kamala Harris's campaign spending habits alone, man, if the Biden administration comes, I mean, if the Trump administration, if I'm not saying they're good, bad, or indifferent, if they just start looking around and saying, let's see what money was spent on, holy God, you mean they did this? Tony Blinken, the 51 Intelligence, Sullivan, the people at the top of the Biden, all throughout the Biden administration are so crooked, are so corrupt, have committed sins and crimes of moral turpitude to a point where some of them would rather die than be exposed. I believe that, and so at this point, I think the only hope, the hope and prayer that we have, I have one hope and prayer. I think about Iran, and they've been around for, I heard someone say, a Muslim guy say to me one time, I said, yeah, Iran, this, he said, let me explain something, Garland. He says, look at Iran. It's been around for thousands of years. Their civilization. He said, look at the people in charge of Iran. He said, they're all old. He said, you don't get old being stupid. You're old because you know how to stay alive, particularly in an environment that they live in when you got the most powerful, empire in the world that wants to kill you, and you're able to stay alive. There's a lot of wisdom. Russia's been around for 1,000 years. China's been around for. I believe that they're saying to themselves, if we can just make it to January 20th without everybody dying, I think we can make it. Because that's what I'd be saying, and that's what you'd be saying. And I think for all of this, they probably are the same. I don't know, because they probably feel like this. If it gets close enough and these lunatic fascists feel like, oh my God, we can't goad Russia into starting it, they may just fire on us themselves. You know what I mean? But the bottom line is, I will guarantee you there are discussions between Iran, North Korea, Russia, and China, all of them saying, they're trying to turn the table over before January 20th, because it ain't just here. God only knows what they're going to do in the Straits of Taiwan, what they're going to do in the Middle East, right? Because they're desperate. But I guarantee you these entities are talking, saying, how do we make it to January 20th? And it ain't going to be easy. But I guarantee you that conversation's going on, because I'm just, as I always say, I'm Schmucky the Clown on YouTube. If I can figure it out, people who are the Sergei Lavrovs and Wang Yis and these people of the world, they can figure it out. Scott.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, we live in a dangerous world. There's no doubt about that. And, Iran, Israel, China, Taiwan, North Korea, South Korea, these are all big, big problems that, again, when we talk about the Biden approach, let's just be frank here. Biden has brought us closer to the potential of war with Iran than any other president.
And China, everybody. Yeah. Let's be honest, Scott. There's no spot on earth. I hate to interrupt you, but I want to throw this in. We have the worst relations that we've ever had with Iran, that we've ever had with China, that we've ever had with North Korea. Every place on earth, we have the worst, the most dangerous relations with everybody that we've ever had, to a point where I woke up this morning saying no Democrat should ever be in charge of this country again. Ever. I'm against outlawing parties, but I ain't far from being there. Anyway, go ahead, Scott.
No, I mean, let's just take a look at China. When Trump left office last time, we were in the midst of a trade war with China. But there was no talk about a shooting war. It was a trade war. That's it. We're going to sanction they're going to stop buying our agricultural products, and we're going to stop buying this. And, and eventually sanity will prevail, because it's the economy, stupid. And at some point in time, trade wars create, economic tension domestically in either country. And the politicians go, well, it's time for us to stop being stupid. Let's go on. the first meeting, Biden took over January 20th. In March, Blinken and Sullivan met with their Chinese counterparts, the foreign minister and this old school foreign policy guy. And they tried to play we're America, we're going to, preach to you. You have to listen to us now, sermonize about how bad you are. The Chinese cut them off and said, no, it's a different game, guys. We don't listen to you anymore. You've got nothing. You've got no right to talk to us. And then Chinese lectured the Americans. But they put the Americans on notice that, no, this is not business as usual. It's a whole new way of thinking. In the time since then, we have transitioned from a trade war into literally on the cusp of a shooting war. Let's think about this. Let's break it down. There's now a trilateral arrangement between the United States, Japan, and South Korea to contain North Korea that includes active discussion of use of nuclear weapons. Compare and contrast that with Donald Trump seeking to denuclearize North Korea and normalize relations with North Korea. You see where Biden has taken us. Let's go down to the Philippines. We have reinvigorated a 1951 mutual security treaty now to make it where we are ready to intervene militarily against China in the South China Sea. And just to show you what China thinks of that, just the other day, China, there's one of the disputed areas is the Scarborough Shoals. And China went out there and said, hey, by the way, we're going to go ahead and publish the geographic coordinates of this as a baseline, meaning we're declaring this our territory. And because we've now published the coordinates, we can describe our territorial waters and our economic zone. And then they sent their Navy in to say, it's ours, we're patrolling it, we're protecting it. Bring it on. You want a 1951 Mutual Security Pact? Here it is, baby. We just said this is ours. What are you going to do about it? Again, America, we're very close to a shooting war in the South China Sea. And do you want to know what the consequences that, how much of the world's travel goes through the South China Sea, the shipping lanes there? You want to watch the global economy go down the second that gets shut down? There it is. Joe Biden. You can thank Joe Biden for that. And if you're Australian and you believe in peace, love, and happiness, understand that we went from having a company's worth of pre-positioned equipment there to support exercises to having a full-time Marine Corps battalion permanently based there. We now have a Marine Corps brigade there. We're building up a brigade of pre-positioned equipment for the United States, and we're talking about building new airfields. We're bringing in strategic weaponry and all this. Australia, when we go to war with China, you go to war with China. Welcome to the club. This is how we roll under Biden. And so Trump, a man who said he wants to get back to a simple trade war with China, is inheriting a policy construct built around militarism, that the Biden administration has militarized every aspect of our interaction with the Chinese. To include, just to remind people, because we got to get back to nuclear war, because I know all the haters out there, Scott shouldn't talk about nuclear war. It's not a big deal. The Chinese are building, I think, 300 missile silos in Western China. 100 of those are going to be outfitted with DF-41 solid rocket intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of carrying 10 to 12 independently targeted warheads each. We can't do anything about it. They're there. But what we did is change our nuclear employment plan now so that we're targeting them. And we changed the warheads on our missiles, the fusing mechanism now, so that instead of putting in 3 warheads per silo, we can do 1 so that we can hold on. Isn't that what Buchanan said? We can hold on to some of our nuclear reserve while we destroy the world. This is Biden did this. Joe Biden did this. And we could go off on Israel and Iran and what we're doing with Iran, the militarization of that. But it always comes back to NATO and Europe. Joe Biden has turned what should have been just a regional conflict into the potential for a third world war. When I say potential, I mean a real potential, as in we're at war with Russia right now. What part of the United States attacked Russia don't you understand yet? The Russians get it, they understand it, and they're acting accordingly. But no, the mainstream media has decided that we don't want to call it that because the demented president won't take any questions about it. And Tony Blinken doesn't want to admit that he has carried out a coup d'etat with the deep state to run this policy. Because that's what it is. This is a State Department coup d'etat run by Tony Blinken, supported by Jake Sullivan. Lloyd Austin is silent. I mean, because if Lloyd Austin was involved, Rear Admiral Buchanan would never have been allowed to make that statement. But Buchanan now feels empowered. The curious thing, as a side, and I'll let you get back to asking questions, but, when you take a look at, there's a movement out there called Global Zero. Mm-hmm. And what it means is we want to get down to no nuclear weapons around there. And some of the people that are the most, staunch supporters of this are former commanders of U.S. Strategic Command, the guys who used to control the nuclear arsenal. Whenever they got those 4 stars on and their control, they're all like, peace through strength, nuclear power is the best, war, we can win a war. And as soon as they walk away from that, oh, it's insane, guys, we got to stop it. This is crazy, 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 crazy. I can guarantee you that Buchanan doesn't believe what he says. He knows the truth. You can't be in that position and not know the truth. But he also knows that his job is to project a certain image, a certain capability. So he's going to say that. But Buchanan, especially after this scare, if we survive, I bet when he retires, he's going to join Global Zero because he's going to do what everybody else went and says, that's crazy what we're doing. These war plans are insane. There's no way we can win. It automatically leads to the destruction of the world. This is why so many former strategic command, commanding officers are supporting global elimination of all nuclear weapons because they know the truth. The truth is we can't win a nuclear war. We just all die. And once we begin that process, take a look at who helped Annie Jacobson write her book. Read in the front all the people who advised her. They're all the ones who wrote the war plan. And they all say the exact same thing. Once it starts, it can't be stopped. I'll say it one more time. Once it starts, it can't be stopped. There's no such thing as limited nuclear war. Once it starts, 72 minutes later, we're all dead. That's the reality. That's how quick this is going to happen. I hope we get to have our Thanksgiving meal. At least I haven't bought the turkey yet, so I wouldn't have wasted the money, but it wouldn't matter because the money was not going to be worth anything anyways. But we're in a horrible situation here. I mean, you have to almost laugh about it because otherwise you'd be paralyzed with fear. Everybody listening to me should be paralyzed with fear. That's how dangerous this situation is. Russia right now is mass producing nuclear fallout shelters and trying to get them out there because they understand what's about to happen. They know what's about to happen because they're not bluffing.
Let me add something else because we've hit on it. And I think that when you discuss this, as I said this morning, and I don't think it was a emotional reaction. When I got up and I read all of these things and I'm looking by and I just thought to myself, I don't believe in outlawing parties per se. I had to add that caveat. I can't see how I can look at this and say any Democrat should ever run this country again. And I'm a guy who, I got my issues with the Republicans. Do not get me wrong. Yeah, I'm an independent. I've had it with both parties. But I looked at this and I'm like, China just said the other day, Taiwan is they just reminded them, Taiwan is our red line. What did China just do? Just days ago, they said, these are our red lines. Don't screw with our red lines. And I believe the reason they did it because they see what's happening in Russia and they understand the desperation of these lunatics. And I think China said, look, we're going to lay out our red lines too. Let me show you something. As if things aren't. ICC issues arrest warrants for Netanyahu Gallant over war crimes, right? This means that the 124 member states have to detain Netanyahu and Gallant should they enter their territory, right? So we're in a situation now where I used to say, well, boy, Netanyahu is a total lunatic. No, he's not. He's no more lunatic than Joe Biden. He is an extension of the lunacy in Foggy Bottom and at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. He's not a lunatic as an individual lunatic. He's an extension of the lunacy and fascism there, right? So now you got Netanyahu and his people backed into a corner saying, oh my God, it's all, we're done. We're screwed. We're losing the war. We're getting pummeled by Hezbollah. God only knows the Russians are probably going to give heaven knows kind of missiles they're going to be given to the Houthis, etc. And so they're liable to do anything. That should have happened long ago. Don't get me wrong. But my point is the absurdity, the preposterous nature of these fascists in Washington, D.C. has created like the perfect storm. And as we get closer to hoping and praying to make it till they get out of the door, everything they have touched has turned into disaster on a level that we couldn't even imagine. And now we've got the Israel, which should have happened based on Israel just bombed Syria and killed like 50 or 60 civilians yesterday. Your thoughts on the Netanyahu ICC warrant and how that affects things, Scott?
It doesn't. It's purely a political game. Here's the fact. No country will arrest Benjamin Netanyahu. And any country that did, the Netherlands won't take him in.
Yeah.
Because the United States will intervene. It just isn't going to happen. It should. I wish it would. But Israel is an extension of America. We have made it clear that an American soldier arrested, brought to The Hague, will result in an American military action against The Hague to rescue that soldier, that we don't recognize their jurisdiction. And we have said that we don't recognize their jurisdiction when it comes to the indictments against the Israelis. An American military force will be used to protect the Israelis. Now, I don't see Netanyahu and Gallant making any trips anywhere anytime soon anyways. But let's say Netanyahu does fly to the United States. And on the way there, his aircraft is intercepted by, airplanes of a nation that believes in this treaty, and they bring him to ground and they arrest him and they try. No, the United States will carry out military action. That's it. Let's say his plane has a malfunction, is forced to land for an emergency in a country that respects the ICC. They won't arrest him. That's the thing about it. This is purely a political gesture. There's no danger whatsoever of Netanyahu ever having handcuffs put on him by the ICC. The bigger danger is having handcuffs put on by the Israelis, because they are taking a long, hard look at him as a criminal on a number of fronts. But I don't waste too much time on this ICC thing. I see a lot of pro-Palestinian people out there celebrating this, and I understand where they're coming from. It might be a moral victory, but nothing's going to happen from it. So therefore, why waste any intellectual stock in pursuing this? Because it just isn't, nothing's going to happen from this. It'll create interesting political sides, all of which, in my opinion, distract from the bigger issues at hand, which is, how do we stop a war with Russia? How do we stop a war with China? Israel at this point, I got in trouble for my wife this morning because, and again, anybody who knows me, I'm a staunch supporter of Palestine. I'm very strong against Zionism, against this Israeli government. But I said, I don't want to talk about Gaza right now. I don't want to talk about anything that's happening in the Middle East, because none of that's going to kill us.
Right.
What's happening in Ukraine is going to kill us all. And my wife pushed back. She said, well, from the Palestinian perspective, it doesn't matter, does it? They're dying right now in a Holocaust. From their perspective, it's already happening.
Yeah.
And then I responded by saying, I understand that, and I want to fight in their defense, but I can't fight in their defense if I'm dead. And if you want to respect the sacrifice that the Palestinians have made to date, and respect that by pushing for the creation of a Palestinian state, that means that their sacrifice, their deaths haven't been in vain, then we have to be alive to achieve that. Otherwise, it's just another futile death that'll be forgotten when everybody dies. So, but I understand both sides of the argument, but I've taken a very, I have my own podcast, and I have some fantastic guests that could come on, and I was going to bring them on to talk about the situation in the Middle East, about Israel, about Palestine. Miko Peled, the former soldier, son of a general who is very outspoken and articulate and intellectually sound in his opposition. He's ready to come on, but not this week, because I want to stop a nuclear war. I want to focus on, to me, what is the existential threat of our time. And unfortunately, it's playing out exactly as anybody who's looked at this would have played. We keep calling a bluff, thinking the Russians will bend. And now the Russians aren't bending, but we're so committed to calling the bluff that we don't see that the Russians, are standing up. So we think they're bluffing again, and we come. And at some point in time, it will become painfully obvious. And I just pray that it's not, that at least give us one or two chances for waking up before the nuclear weapons start flying. But we're only a couple steps away. I mean, there's only so much more Russia can do in order to build in escalatory measures. Again, we should be thankful that Vladimir Putin only hit Dnipro last night. That means now he has additional options built in for escalation before he goes into striking NATO. But now what is Biden going to do? Double down on stupid? Or what is the deep state going to do?
Right.
And here's the thing. Remember that old saying, if you're going to take out the king, kill him. There's a coup taking place right now. Literally, the Democrats, the deep state is carrying out a coup d'etat right now in Washington, D.C. to deny the mandate to Trump that he has won in this election. I'm not saying that they're trying to unseat him, although we don't know what the Yeah, I'm not saying they're not, but I don't have any evidence that they are. But they are trying to tie him up so much that he can't do what he wants to do from a foreign policy standpoint, especially when it comes to NATO, Ukraine, and Russia.
I also think this, and I think it's valid to have this discussion. I also think they understand something, and that is that what they're doing, if it doesn't, quote, work, and God only knows, I don't even know how we would define the term work, but if it doesn't, that they put themselves in a far worse position. Because you look at Nate Silver, die hard, support the Democrats, the Republicans are always going to lose. And Nate Silver is going, whoa, you know what I mean? Okay, I don't like the Republicans, Trump's blah, 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 blah. But I don't want to die either. That there's, I'm sure, a lot of people starting to say, I'm all for this partisan stuff and let's go with the Democrats. But wait a minute, you're talking about killing us all. I think that if they don't, they're creating, I put it like this: if I'm Donald Trump and the Trump administration, I'm saying, oh my God, they're far worse than we thought. If in some kind of way we do make it, and I'm going to use this phrase, anybody feel free to use it, the race to January 20th. If we somehow do win the race to January 20th and we get there alive, holy crap, we really got to act to get these people out of the way. My God. So now they're creating a dynamic where Scott Ritter, you and I, Garland Nixon president, Scott's vice president, secretary of defense, whatever you want to call it, right? And we somehow get through this in January 20th. We're like, oh my God, we're sweating. We're going to sleep for 2 days because we haven't slept for 6 weeks. And then we're saying, we got to clean this mess up in a hurry because these people are too dangerous. You know what I mean? They're creating a dynamic where, and not just Trump, but people who had supported them for their entire lives are waking up to the reality that this is pure fascism. And if you've ever studied towards the end of the death of the Third Reich, the temporary shelving of the Third Reich from the looks of things, but towards the end, Hitler and his people were saying, we've got to, women and children everybody's got to fight. And if they all die, then they weren't sufficiently patriotic. It was at a point it became, all the people in Germany, the entire country, we just, so what if it all dies? It gets to a point with fascists that we could care less if all of our people die. As for the cause, that's even better. We all die for the cause, hooray! And I think that there are people now who are waking up to that reality who weren't. I think a Lloyd Austin or somebody or some people like that could resign walk away and say, oh, this has gone too far, could go to Congress and say, hey, look, guys, I don't know who you support, but you're about to die if you don't do something. Anyway, your thoughts on all of that, Scott? Just throwing some thoughts out there for intellectual conversation.
No, I mean, let's get back to what we were talking about here. If we're right, and I'm assuming that you agree with me when I say that the deep state is carrying out an active coup d'etat right now, not a passive one, an active one. They are making the grab. And remember, I've talked about this before. I've told the story about going to the INF treaty reunion a couple years ago, and the Biden sent the head of his arms control group, and came question and answer period, and one of the most experienced arms controllers out there, a retired Air Force colonel, stood up and asked the question to this individual. Joe Biden ran on a platform of sole purpose doctrine for our nuclear forces, meaning that the sole purpose of America's nuclear force is nuclear deterrence, and therefore we shall not use nuclear weapons under any circumstances except if we are attacked by nuclear weapons. He said that's what he said, and it's one of the most rational policy positions one can take. Obama ran on it for 8 years, didn't do anything. I'll tell you why he didn't do anything as soon as I tell you why Joe Biden didn't do anything. Because the answer that came back from this administrative official is that the interagency wasn't ready for it. And we all looked around each other and said, who the hell is the interagency? Now, we know who the interagency is, but who voted for the interagency? Who among us voted for the interagency? The answer is nobody. Nobody voted for the interagency. Nobody voted for the establishment. They've taken over. And I was listening again to this WAMC roundtable, and it was hilarious because they sometimes they tell the truth when they don't mean to, because when they're trying to spin things up. Because they were sitting there, first of all, they were saying there's no such thing as a deep state. No such thing as a deep state. It doesn't exist. That's a right-wing trope, and they made it up. And now they're saying, well, there is a deep state. But then they said, we don't understand, the Republicans are supposed to be conservative, and yet the most conservative aspect of Congress is to slow roll things, to make sure things don't go too quickly, to think about things, that it's okay to take legislative proposals and drag them out for 7 years, and because they all come from New York, and that's what happens in New York, 7 years, and they go away, no change ever. And but then they turn around and they say, well, but that's only good if you have a deep state that keeps everything running that you believe in. See, the deep state has been taken over by the Democrats. The deep state is woke. The deep state isn't conservative. The deep state believes in everything that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have been pushing. And now the deep state understands that they're coming under attack from somebody who is going to kill them. This isn't going to be a slow roll. They're not worried about Trump coming in and starting legislation that's going to get trapped in Congress, never make it out of Congress, and because that's what happens. Every president comes in and says, I'm going to change the world. Then they come in, they throw legislation out there, and it just dies, either in Congress or it dies because the deep state doesn't want it to happen. And Trump's coming in and saying, well, I'm just going to kill the deep state. What you want FBI reforms? No. We're just going to get rid of the FBI. You want DOJ reform? No, that's okay. We're gonna start all over, scratch. We're just going to start all over. We're getting rid of the deep state, and the deep state is scared because they know they're the ones who think they're in control. They are in control. They just launched a coup. So we are at a point, and this is important to bring out when you say how far will they take this coup? I think they'll take it all the way because they understand what's at stake. They've gone for the king, so you have to kill the king. If you go for the king and you don't kill the king's going to kill you. And so, right now, Trump is looking at this. Everybody's looking at it. They realize that they're gunning for them to either deny certain people to come in, slow roll Trump, kill the Trump administration, whatever. That's the deep state. They're not elected. They have no inherent powers, just their permanent existence. And they realize that if they don't do something, they're going to die come January 20th. And so this is an existential struggle on so many different levels. It's existential between the U.S. and Russia, but the U.S. is now defined not by the democratic intent as expressed by the people on election day, but by an unelected mob, a deep state that says we don't want to yield to the will, to the mandate of the people. So we're going to do what they're doing. And this is dangerous. They're taking us down the path of a nuclear conflict with Russia. And it's very, very frightening.
And let me show everybody this with all great respect. This was on Judge Napolitano. And let me say this, I recommend everyone, Judge Napolitano, I've met him and talked to him, a wonderful guy. Back in the day when I was at Fox Business, he had a show there. I used to see him sometime. Love the judge. He had Scott on regularly. So if you haven't watched Judge Napolitano's stream, I suggest you go there. I suggest that you subscribe, and it's one of the best that you can possibly find. But this was on it the other day. This is something, after I saw this video, I said, well, let me search the internet. One of the things I try to do is try to see what they're hiding. Man, good luck finding this, because they've hidden this one, behind the wall and put bricks and plaster over it, right, when it comes to online. But let's watch this. I think it's important.
Today, under Joe Biden, a global conflict between nuclear armed powers would mean death and destruction on a scale unmatched in human history. It would be nuclear Armageddon. Nothing is more important than avoiding that nightmare. We will avoid it, but we need new leadership. Every day this proxy battle in Ukraine continues. We risk global war. We must be absolutely clear that our objective is to immediately have a total cessation of hostilities. All shooting has to stop. This is the central issue. We need peace without delay. In addition, there must also be a complete commitment to dismantling the entire globalist neocon establishment that is perpetually dragging us into endless wars, pretending to fight for freedom and democracy abroad, while they turn us into a third world country and a third world dictatorship right here at home. The State Department, the defense bureaucracy, the intelligence services, and all of the rest need to be completely overhauled and reconstituted to fire the deep staters and put America first.
Now, again, I'm an independent guy. This is the madman. This is the crazy person. This is the person that we can't possibly allow into office. He'll kill us all. He'll destroy everything. But yet, we've got one guy who says, bluff, who cares about this nuclear thing? I think we can take them. And you got another guy, tell me, as a far lefty, guy, and I don't mean lefty from all of the multiple genders, crap on that. I mean the old school lefty, who looks at that and says, yeah, that kind of makes sense to me. But when I look at that, the intelligence services are watching that too. Not that he can or will do it. I mean, whatever, that's irrelevant. I don't care what you think of Trump. The intelligence services are watching that. The Biden administration are watching that. Your thoughts, Scott Ritter?
Well, as Chuck Schumer famously or infamously said about Donald Trump, you start messing with the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday to get you. Now, first thing is when you have a Senate Majority Leader saying this as if it's a good thing, that should be disturbing. The intelligence community shouldn't have any ways from Sunday to get the President of the United States. The intelligence community exists to serve the American people, serve the president by looking out for our national security. But the intelligence community has become part of the deep state. And they're the ones entrusted with secrets and the ability to collect intelligence on you and things of that nature. The reality is that what people are accusing Matt Gaetz of doing, the behavior, I can tell you straight up, every elected official in Washington, D.C. they've tried to put in a compromising position. Straight up tell you that. I was called. I was invited to a party back in 1999 when I was being considered by the Republican Party to run for office, and I was invited to a party by the interns of a certain senator who will be left unnamed, and then I got a phone call from a military. A friend in the military who works in the White House. He said, "Did you get invited to this party?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Scott, listen to me very carefully. Pack your bags and go home tonight and never come back here." He said, "You don't want to go to that party. This is the worst kind of party. These are the parties where they destroy you. This is the party where they're going to try to own you. You will be thrown more temptations than you can possibly imagine, et cetera." And so I went home. And so I'm not surprised. I'm not saying Matt Gaetz is guilty. I'm not saying he's innocent. What I'm saying is the scene that he found, that people allege that he found himself in, is a scene that's created on purpose by the FBI, by the CIA, by foreign intelligence, Mossad, and others. And it's designed to break you, corrupt you, and then own you with that information. And everybody who rises to the top has this file on them without exception. You don't get to that level unless they believe they can control you, unless your name is Donald Trump and they can't control him. And look at who the establishment fears the most: Tulsi Gabbard. Why? Because she ain't been to the party. If she had been to the party, they wouldn't be worrying about Tulsi. RFK Jr., he hasn't been to the party. He creates his own party, maybe, but it's a party that is his party, not the party that's designed where they own you. I don't know. I think very highly of RFK Jr. But I will tell you that he's not an owned man. They don't own him. Elon Musk, they don't own him. Not at all. These are the people that have come to prominence outside of the system. And so they have not been corrupted by the system. This deep state, when you talk about, if they ever dug in and found out what's really going on, the hell that would be paid. Imagine that you didn't have an FBI and Department of Justice that was in the business of corrupting Americans and controlling Americans, but rather protecting Americans. What would happen if somebody actually digs in and finds out the truth about what the FBI has been doing for the last 40 years? I mean, you'd be filling up the prisons with tens of thousands of FBI agents, because this is all they do.
For the last 8. For the last 8. I said for the last 8. Forget the last 40. The last 4. The last 4 months.
With all due respect to the 40 agents that came to my house, either you were just obeying orders and you really didn't know what you're doing, or you're a criminal. If you signed off on the probable cause statement to that judge, you know you were lying. You know that you were basically trying to silence me, intimidate me, because you didn't want me going to Russia so that I could learn about Russia and come back and argue against the insane policies of the establishment. You see, everything that I represent right now and speaking out against nuclear, it's against the establishment. The establishment is now, they are scared, not because of me necessarily, but you have a president coming in that isn't of them and won't be controlled by them, who recognizes how bad they are because he survived the first term. He knows what happened. He said so much to Joe Rogan. He said, I wasn't prepared to govern when I came in. And so I had to turn to the establishment to staff my team. And so the establishment came in and took control of me. He's learned that lesson. He's building a team that can't be controlled. And the establishment is panicking right now. Absolute panic. And we've been saying the same thing over and over again, but there is a coup d'etat that has taken place. Joe Biden is no longer the functioning president of the United States. And it's imperative that somebody does something about this. We have, in the United States, the Republicans have a majority in the House of Representatives. Begin impeachment proceedings. Expose this. Now, it's going to go to a Senate that, who knows what they're going to do at trial, but the Senate will have to take it. And in the trial, maybe you can start exposing things. But what you need to do is put the establishment on the defensive.
Right.
Don't let the establishment be able to proactively come out here and dictate the terms. They're creating a war with Russia to distract you from the fact that they don't want to leave power. So something has to happen. We have to deal with that issue. And I don't know if that's going to happen. Hell, the Senate can't even come in and stand up for, traditional Republican values. I'm not saying that they're good, but I mean, what do you stand for? You're going to let the Democrats, who are lame duck, stack federal courts because you decided you didn't want to show up to work. They're just not taking this seriously. I don't think there's enough Republicans that are recognizing that there has been a coup by the deep state, and it's leading us to a war. And the deep state, let's call it out. Who is Tony Blinken? Hillary Clinton's person. Who is Jake Sullivan? Hillary Clinton's person. So now we know what the deep state is. The deep state is that part of the bureaucracy that came into power because when Clinton came in, he purged the Bushies, purged them. Okay. When George W. came in, he didn't recognize the enemy. He put his people in political positions, but he kept the Clintonites in the deep state, who then solidified themselves. And then when Obama came in, he dug in deeper, got him in permanently. And Trump was a prisoner to this deep state, and Biden came in and empowered them even more. The deep state, the establishment, is a progressive democratic machine that has not been voted on by the American public. And Trump recognizes this. And the people that he's nominated recognize this. And they're going to go to war against this. And the deep state's not going to go gently. So we're looking at, this conflict here that drives that conflict out there. It's all related.
And add this, because there are people in the chat. Trump's this, Trump's bad. Trump. It to some extent, it isn't really that much is about Trump. It's about, let's say he would or wouldn't do everything that we think he may or may not do. The level of liability for their criminal activity is so high for the Biden people in the deep state that they can't afford to take that chance. Here's something else. Some parties in Germany are starting to make real noise about Nord Stream. They're starting to say we need a UN investigation into Nord Stream. For all they know, the people in the Trump administration may say, well, we're not going to stand in the way of that. They don't know that. They may very well, they may not. What happens if people get pissed in Europe and Trump's in and the Biden team would interfere, but Trump's like, screw Europe, I'm sick of these. And some of the noise in Germany starts saying, we got to look around. For God's sake, the Americans are disengaging. And that means that people are going to start turning over rocks, and under it, they're going to find that the German government was complicit in this attack, and we'll be facing a rope around our neck, or a friggin', the hordes will be showing up at the gates with pitchforks. And so the whole machine in Germany, the Annalena Baerbocks, the Keir Starmers, who have been involved in these kinds of unthinkable things against their own constituency, notwithstanding whether Trump will or won't do anything, are horrified at the thought now that, holy crap, if the people in the UK find out that they have been impoverished, and a friend of mine was in London recently, he says, I couldn't believe what I saw. You know what I mean? If the people in Germany, France, find out that they've been impoverished deliberately, and that their people met with these, and they're, we got to do this or that. Well, our people are going to be, screw that, who cares? The whole cabal, their lives are in danger. Everything they do and stand for is in danger. It's not just in Washington, D.C. that there's fear and horror of the potential. Again, the people in there that are saying Trump is won and he's part of the established, notwithstanding whether that's true or false, the fear and concern about the potential, just like our fear right now and concern is about the potential for nuclear war, hoping that it doesn't happen. They have the potential for a nuclear political nuke hitting them. Scott.
No, you're 100% correct. There's going to be a nuclear bomb. Again, I mean, it's all speculation right now. We don't know.
Certainly.
Trump. I read the comments and I'm not supposed to. And there's a lot of people out there saying that I've drunk the MAGA Kool-Aid, that I'm somehow in the Trump cult. You guys have no freaking clue who I am, if that's what you believe. All right. I don't like this guy. I really don't like him as a person. I don't know him as a person. They say he's a good grandfather. He says he's a good father. That may be, but I don't like him, the callousness. I don't like the fact that he makes fun of disabled people. I don't like the fun that he makes fun of, John McCain, not because John McCain is a good guy. He's not. He's worse than Trump, but he mocked John McCain's military service and denigrated the fact that he was a prisoner of war who behaved honorably as a prisoner of war. I mean, you just can't, you can't do this if you want to be the president of the United States. You can't badmouth judges who are of Hispanic descent and call them Mexican judges and all this. You can't do that. That's not right. It's just not, this has nothing to do with what he did on the bus and what he said on the bus. I don't care about that. I mean, I do, but I don't. I care about the man who wants to be the commander in chief and how he feels about the Constitution, how he feels about basic governing principles. I'm not a Trump man, but I have said we need a revolution in America. That's the only way we're going to get the change. The deep state is too deeply entrenched. We were falling victim to the duopoly. There was no difference between the Democrats and Republicans at the end of the day in the way they governed. Trump is bringing a revolution. It ain't going to be pretty if it happens. He's not going to be the knight on a white horse, but the chance we have of having the revolution is only happening because of Donald Trump. And I recognize that. The other thing is he won an election. That changes a lot because now we're not talking about the theory of change. We're talking about the reality. He will be the commander in chief. He will be the president of the United States. And he has a mandate given to him by the people. So however I feel about him is irrelevant. I want America to succeed. I want him to succeed because I love my country. And so a lot of the little nitpicky things I had out there about Trump don't matter anymore because he's going to be the president of the United States. It's not that I've drunk the Kool-Aid or I'm part of the cult. I'm an American citizen. I said the same thing about Joe Biden when he got elected. And you guys know my history with Biden. I don't like him. I hate him. But I said he's now the president of the United States. He's the commander in chief. His failure will be America's failure. I need him to succeed because I want America to succeed. And I pushed for Biden's success. He failed. And now we have a deep state coup. But no, I'm not drinking the MAGA Kool-Aid, but I do want America to succeed. And right now, I believe that the thing that will help us survive as a nation going forward is what I call a constitutional revolution, meaning that as long as Trump operates within the four corners of the United States Constitution and complies with constitutional mandate, there's a lot he can do. We've had this discussion in the country for a long time about the unitary executive. The meaning that the founding fathers meant to put a lot of powers in the hand of the president. That this notion of checks and balances, can be superseded by the national good. Now, I personally like checks and balances, but when people start saying, well, we want to give Trump unitary executive power, people go, well, that's unconstitutional. Actually, it's not. It's not. It's the level in which he can exercise this may be up to constitutional debate, but the mere fact that somebody asserts unitary executive power, Barack Obama did it. You guys do know that he signed presidential orders to kill American citizens without due process. I hope everybody understands that he did that. Mr. Constitutional Scholar. George W. Bush did it, went to war without congressional approval, without manufactured law, intelligence about weapons of mass destruction. Everybody has done it. All presidents exercise. Trump is going to exercise it, I think, to a degree that hasn't been done before, but it's constitutional. And as long as Trump abides by the Constitution and the changes that occur don't fundamentally change the structure of the country, we have a Congress, we have a judiciary, we have an executive. I'm all for it. but we need a revolution. The deep state is not constitutional. The deep state operates outside of the framework of the constitutional. I'm not going to call it unconstitutional, but it is, there was a term that was used, like a-constitutional, meaning that it doesn't, it exists regardless of the Constitution. And it governs without the constraints of the Constitution. And the revolution needs to kill it. And that's what I'm hopeful for.
Yeah. And I think what people don't realize is people are like, Trump's going to make sweeping changes. We are in a position where it don't even take sweeping changes to make, you know what I mean? We are so far over the top that a few small changes. One of the things I think they're horrified about Tulsi Gabbard, the deep state, probably their biggest, one of their biggest, there's so many of them. One of the reasons I think they're horrified about Tulsi Gabbard is this. They come in and they tell the president, whatever, a bunch of bullshit and lies, right? Oh, we've got to act on this because this guy's going to do this and he's losing in North Korea, whatever, right? And so as long as they can keep the president in this zone of bullshit, I'll just call it that, where he's acting on deep state narratives instead of the truth and reality, it makes it easier for them to steer the direction of this big ship. What happens if Tulsi Gabbard or whoever gets in and they actually go to the president and they say, here's the story. This is what we're dealing with right now. And it's true or even close to true. Even if Trump is an establishment guy and everything they're claiming that he is, a person will make different decisions based on the truth than they will on bullcrap.
Yeah.
And so even one little thing like that, and it ain't little, changes everything.
Yep.
What happened?
The fact that Tulsi Gabbard is going to be the person briefing the president of the United States every morning is a game changer.
Yep.
Let's put it this way, just so people understand this, and I know this to be true. The CIA Directorate of Operations has programs, legacy programs, that deal with how it interfaces around the world that the director of the CIA is purposely not briefed on, doesn't know about it. And if the director of the CIA doesn't know about it, it doesn't have presidential authority. These are programs that some of them may be briefed to Congress, the little select few who then pass a black budget. But the members of Congress who vote on this are part of the deep state, meaning that they are owned by the deep state. These programs affect how the world operates. They have a bunch of business fronts and things of that nature that are out there doing things that related to managing who's in power around the world, et cetera, that the president of the United States is not in control of. And it's been this way for a long time. The most dangerous people in the world are members of the CIA's Directorate of Operations who are involved in this. Gina Haspel is one of those. She used to be the director of the CIA. She knew about the programs. But these aren't good people. They're not even good Americans. They claim to be defending America, but they do it in a way that is outside of any span of control. Tulsi Gabbard is the director of national intelligence, will be able to, and will have the inclination to, become briefed on all of these programs. And she will then be able to go to the president and say, do we really want to be doing this? Imagine if you're the ambassador to a country and you're supposed to be in charge of everything. Legally speaking, the CIA station chief is supposed to work, can't do anything without your permission. But you become the ambassador and you find out that the CIA is just doing whatever the hell it wants to do, because that's the way it's always been. And there's no checks and balances. And you're trying to implement a policy direction given to you by the State Department and in conversation with the president, because you're the ambassador, and the CIA chief, station chief, is in all your meetings taking notes, not to help you, but to undermine you, to go out there and do things to undermine. This makes the CIA a direct threat to the United States of America. But it's allowed to continue over and over again because no director of the CIA has ever had the balls to take that on. Tulsi Gabbard does, and they're figurative, but she has what it takes to clean up. And at the same time, the institutions that would be used to intimidate you domestically, the FBI, Matt Gaetz has the balls to take them down in the Department of Justice. We are looking at a real potential to do some serious house cleaning in the national security state, which is the muscle of the deep state. And Tulsi Gabbard's the person to do it, and that's why they're scared of her. Did you see who's the Indian lady that was running for president?
Nikki Haley.
Yeah, Nikki Haley. Suddenly she's come out. Yeah, and I made a tweet that I'm not so proud of. I said a woman scorned, because Nikki Haley thought she was going to be in on the administration, and she didn't get the invitation. And now she is so pissed off that Tulsi Gabbard got the invitation, and she's just out there, But Nikki Haley is the establishment. She is the deep state, and that's their response.
Let me show you something else too. And what you just said, well, they're going to try, if you give them a chicken feather, they're going to try to Kiev a chicken feather, they're going to try to get a turkey feather. If you give them a turkey feather, they're going to try to get a baseball bat. Look at this, Scott. I want you to explain, what do we need to know about tomahawks? Right? This was going a given. So, hey, can we use ATACMS? Yeah, well, let's face it. They fired a bunch of ATACMS and Russians shot them down, which people know. Okay. Ukraine asked Biden for tomahawks, Tomahawk cruise missiles. Ukrainian officials are reportedly planning to demand that Washington send Tomahawk missiles. I don't know if it's the Ukrainian officials that are actually asking that, or if the Biden administration is saying, yeah, tell them you're asking for tomahawks now. These are used for nuclear attacks. You fire a tomahawk at Russia, they have to assume, first of all, it can only be fired by the U.S. with no help, nothing. There would be no assistance whatsoever. This would be the U.S. firing tomahawks, which is a nuclear capable missile specifically used for nuclear attacks at Russia. Russia would then have no choice but to assume that this was a nuclear strike. Scott. I don't know why I said that. I just freaked out for a minute.
Maybe he's not as smart as Russell Dobler. I'm not. But no, this isn't something new, though. I mean, actually, Zelensky's made this request directly to Lloyd Austin, and Lloyd Austin told him to pound sand. You're not getting a tomahawk. It's just not conceivable. This, though, let me put it this way. If Russia failed to respond to the ATACMS attack, if Putin hadn't blown up Dnipro with RS-26, the next thing would have been the delivery. First of all, we would have given, you'd see free reign of the Storm Shadow and the Scalp. And then we would have delivered the Joint Standoff weapon, which provides a little bit more range. And it would have been moving in that direction. And once you start saying it's okay to strike in, then the question is deeper and deeper. Because what will happen is Russia will pull its resources back. And then Zelensky will say, you've already said it's okay for me to strike this deep. But now the thing that you said was okay to strike here is located here. I need something to reach there. And you create a logic chain that leads to if not the Tomahawk, the United States working with the Ukrainians to develop a domestic Tomahawk. Right now, the Ukrainians, and this is why the Dnipro attack, I think, was so important. The Ukrainians have been trying to build a version of their Neptune missile, and it has long-range strike with precision guidance on it. And there's no way they could build this on their own. So what's happening here is that I believe Germany and in Great Britain have been working with them to incorporate technologies that are associated with the Taurus missile. This is one of the reasons why Scholz is not so anxious to give the Taurus missile, because I think Taurus components are being provided to the Ukrainians to develop this extended range Neptune missile, which will have Tomahawk-like range, but it'll still be constrained by the issue of guidance and who provides the information on the guidance and how it's controlled. In Russia, I think, has taken that off the plate for the moment by taking out the facility where this work was being done. But I don't think Ukraine was ever going to get a Tomahawk just because of what you said, because the moment it's fired, the Russians have to assume the worst. They can't sit there and go, it's 99% chance it's just a conventionally armed. They have to say, wait a minute. it's an American provided system. And maybe the Americans have put a nuke on there and they're doing a decapitation strike or something like that. So yeah, no, this is a dangerous, it's a dangerous request. I think the good news is that the United States is never going to give in to that particular request. The bad news is we are inclined to support developing long-range missiles that will achieve a Tomahawk-like effect on behalf of Ukraine. This is part of that dangerous ladder of escalation that's taking place.
Scott, before we go, one quick thing, and I think this is important. It doesn't have to be quick. It's up to you, and I know you're on board with this. What do you think? I always like to say, you got to give people, what is it? I've heard this. My dad used to say this, the cure for fear is action, right? What do you suggest to people that they need to do right now? The people, we got 5,371 people right now. And I would say to this, everybody, that means everybody out there who has an X account, a Facebook account, whatever, there should be 5,371 posts of this particular episode so that we can multiply this and people can see this and get scared because they need to be scared. What do you suggest that people can and should do now to act in a way to try to hopefully prevent nuclear war?
If you have a member of Congress who is vocal on this issue, contact them and get them to become even more vocal. Double down, write letters.
Op-eds, maybe? Op-eds to your local newspaper?
Op-eds, I mean, if you can place an op-ed, that would be useful. If you have an X account, write a good X post and get it out there. And stuff. Two, if you are a supporter of MAGA, we need to get Trump engaged. The silence from the Trump camp right now is empowering for Biden, because Trump needs to understand that passivity on his part only emboldens the deep state. Trump needs to call it out for what it is. And he needs to send a signal to the deep state that he's on to them, and there will be retribution. But he also needs to tell the Russians that there will be hope come January 20th, that whatever's going on here isn't what's the reality going to be after January 20th, and to at least hold on, because there's nothing Trump can do legally to change what's going on. He's not president. But he can let the Russians know that that will not stand. And he also needs to do the same thing to NATO and to Ukraine. Literally to tell Zelensky, shut up, don't fire another missile. Biden may have given you a green light, I'm giving you a red, and if you don't respect my red over his green on January 20th, you're gone. That's it. You never see another dollar. And Zelensky has said, without American money, we lose the war. So Trump, there's the solution. How do you end the war? Stop giving Ukraine money. And tell Zelensky that's going to be the case if you do anything that further exacerbates the situation. We're trying to bring an end to the war, and you're trying to create a nuclear war. And the same thing with NATO. If you think Trump should basically tell them that NATO will cease to exist. You can't Trump-proof that. No matter what you think you can do, you can't undo what I'm about to do and what I will do if you try to get America into war. Because here's the thing. The American people voted. The American people voted. And they said no to this mad rush to war. No to unfettered money and support to Ukraine. No to nuclear conflict with Russia. The American people voted. They said no. And now you have a deep state hijacking the leadership saying, yes, we don't care. And Trump needs to call it out. This is Trump's mandate, and he needs to be very active. This is a unique time in history. We've never had a situation where an outgoing administration has sought to undermine an incoming administration to this degree. The closest we came to it is George Herbert Walker Bush to Bill Clinton, where the Bush administration, to prevent Clinton from normalizing relations with Iraq, made sure that as Clinton was being sworn in, American jets were bombing Iraq, so that it was a near state of war. So that happened. But and then, I think you saw the same thing the Clintons did, petty things like clog up toilets and do things when when George W. Bush came in, but they didn't seek to actively undermine the administration, to sabotage it, to carry out a coup. This is unique what's happening. And as an American, it's fundamentally un-American. I mean, I'm like everybody else. I was sort of down on American democracy for the long time. I believed that we had a duopoly. It didn't matter. But I made a decision, and you saw it on September 28th at the Kingston rally that Gerald Celente put on. I initiated what I call Operation Dawn, and it was all about saving democracy. It was all about making your vote relevant. And I decided that for me, the issue would be stopping nuclear war. And people can say whatever they want to say. I will say this: of all the candidates that were running for office, only one campaign responded, and that's the one that won. And so when people want to say, well, it didn't do anything, no, I think Operation Dawn was empowering and played a very important role. Everybody knows that op-ed piece that RFK Jr. and Donald Trump Jr. wrote. They're aware of it. It resonates. That's because of this. That's because of Dawn. That's what triggered it. That's initiated it. Now we have to move on. But my point is, the American voter mattered. The American voter mattered. The American voter said, we want change, and they voted for a candidate that's going to give them change after everything the establishment threw at that candidate failed to bring that candidate down. I mean, again, I'm not the biggest fan of Trump, but my God, this man survived everything, including an assassination attempt that should have killed him. I'm not saying divine intervention, but had his head been any other configuration, he'd be dead. It wasn't, a botched assassination attempt. The dude took a kill shot.
Yeah.
And he had it until Trump inexplicably moved his head.
Hey, look at that.
That's it. But the lawfare, all the court cases, everything trying to destroy him economically, destroy him in terms of his reputation, to imprison him. All of this was all done by the deep state, by the establishment, and it failed. And the American people, the majority of them, voted for this guy. This is American democracy in action. This is about, when people say my vote doesn't matter, tell that to the tens of millions of people who voted for Donald Trump to achieve change. Now, Trump still has to live up to that potential, but the potential is there. This is the first real change candidate we have had in a long, long time.
Well, I'll say this. I've told this story many times. I had a young person say to me, a young Black woman, I don't like Trump, the country that she originally came from. He called my country a shithole country. And she went on about 5 minutes about how much she liked Trump. And I said, really? She says, I'm voting for Trump. After all of this long soliloquy about how terrible Trump was, she said, I'm voting for Trump. So when people are in there putting Trump's bad, Trump's this, I think a lot of voters, I can say this, in the Black community, I talked to a lot of people who voted for Trump. They didn't think that Trump was like some saint. They didn't vote for a saint. They didn't think he was the best politician. They disagreed with Republican policies in a lot of ways, right? But they looked at their options and they made a calculated decision. I can go this way or that way. I don't like that way. Don't really like this way. But it's a whole lot better. I always go back to Malcolm X when he talks about the field slave. And if somebody came to the field slave and said, hey, you want to run away? And the field slave looked at it, dogs will be chasing me. I won't have food, no place to sleep, but my life is hell. Any place is better than here. I think Donald Trump, for a lot of people, was any place is better than here. And if they heard one or two things from Trump, I've heard people say, because I ask people who I know, I call them the clothespin voters that put a clothespin over their nose and voted for Trump. Do you think Trump's going to be able? Nah, but maybe he'll do something different. Yeah, maybe he'll do something. They were just looking at it saying, the economy's crap. There's war everywhere. These people are idiots. Yeah, he looks better than that over here. And they made a calculated decision. And I think now they're seeing, you know what? I think I made the right decision. And I say what we got now is, this is what I'm going to call it, the race to January 20th. That's where we are now.
I voted for Donald Trump 3 times. Not because I like Donald Trump, not because I support Donald Trump, but because the first time my other option was Hillary Clinton. That wasn't going to happen.
It was Joe Biden. You got
The
the
second
same thing
time-
you're getting now. Yeah.
Second time, my option was Joe Biden. If you know my history of Biden, that ain't going to happen. And the third time, it was Kamala Harris. And I think the majority of Americans went, that ain't going to happen. So I agree. There's people out there that if the Democrats had given them any choice, a good choice, Donald Trump wouldn't be president today.
Right. They'd have took it. A
But
sane
they
choice.
didn't.
Just a sane. All they wanted
you
was
needed-
sanity.
That's right. But instead, they put a candidate up there who never successfully went through a primary. She was empowered only, I mean, I call her a DEI candidate. I apologize if I insult anybody on that because, but she wasn't qualified to be in any of the positions that she had. And now they wanted to make her president, and she couldn't even act appropriately. I mean, Barack Obama turned out to be one of the greatest con jobs in the world, but he could act. I
He
mean,
was
my
a smart
God,
guy. He was a
I
smart
believed in
guy.
Barack Obama enough to vote for him. I went, okay, Barack, you convinced me, buddy. I'm voting for you. Turns out I was wrong. I mean, he was a con man, but he was articulate. He faked us out. Man, they couldn't even put Kamala Harris couldn't con anything. She was just awful. But it shows you the power of the deep state that so many people voted for her anyways.
And they believed that they could take a person with lower approval ratings than Dick Cheney. And they believed that in 3 months, they could take that person that was a laughing stock and turn that person into the second coming of Eleanor Roosevelt or something. And we're all going to go, oh, we got to vote for her. That's how much confidence, that's how deluded they are. And ultimately, they couldn't do it. I think really there needs to be, not that we'll get that, one of these Marshall in Washington, D.C. style, you know what I mean? How they bring in the stages and the speakers. I think the MAGA people, that people need to put together something like the Rage Against the War Machine, but not like that, really. I'm just saying, I don't even mean that. I mean, somebody needs to put together something in D.C. where they have speakers and all that, and they simply say, no nuclear war. We will
that needs to happen.
Stop that crap. ASAP. Go ahead.
My daughter, I have twin daughters, and I love them both. One is very conservative, she's MAGA Trump. The other one is very liberal, progressive, and I'm not saying she was Kamala because Kamala wasn't liberal or progressive. Kamala was fake, but she bought into the Biden administration and all this kind of stuff. And when Trump was in office the first time, if you remember the summer of George Floyd, and remember the big demonstrations outside the White House where they're trying to surround the White House, and Trump, made his march to the church. She was at the vanguard of the group there at the gate. I remember watching the drone overhead, and I was watching the cops on the horseback come up and the cops maneuver around, and I called her up and I said, get the hell out of there right now. They're getting ready to come at you. She's like, no, Daddy, we believe. I said, get the hell out of there. The cops are ready to come now. Move. And as soon as she moved, the tear gas started wafting, and then she got a whiff of it, but at least she got out of there to get arrested. But my point is, we need that right now. We need to surround the White House, surround Congress, surround the Pentagon with patriotic Americans who say no to nuclear war. No, there will be no nuclear war. That's it. We just reject it. We reject what you're doing. It doesn't mean that you're not supporting Ukraine. If you're supporting Ukraine, though, and you tell me that the price we have to pay is a nuclear war with Russia, I can't be on your side. But I can stand side by side to someone who says, I support Ukraine, and I don't. But we both agree that there can't be a nuclear war. No to nuclear war. This is what we have to do as Americans right now, is make our voice heard. You're not going to get support from the mainstream media. The whole coup d'etat with Kamala Harris took place because CNN decided it needed to happen. MSNBC decided it needed to happen. Look what's happening to them now. MSNBC is getting ready to, Comcast is going to jettison them from the NBC lineup because it's done. I mean, you have people talking about they're going to buy MSNBC because it's finished as a brand, as an institution. CNN is getting ready to dump all of their high price tag people because they can't afford to do it anymore. They're fundamentally broke. But we're not broke. This video is going to be seen by 500,000 people by the time it's done, maybe even more. If I go on Judge Napolitano, that's a 500,000. Right now, this issue is so freaking hot that we're going to have millions of people see this thing. And if there's organizers out there, I'll work with you. Garland, I think you would
Same
work
here.
with me.
Absolutely.
But this is, we don't need to bring in politics. We need to say this is about saving America. This is no to nuclear war. That's it. There's no other message. No to nuclear war. We don't want nuclear war. And I think if we got 1 million people out there, it couldn't be ignored. But we have to say no to nuclear war, one way or another. We need everybody to come together and just say no to nuclear war.
Everyone, don't forget, ScottRitter.com is Scott Ritter's website. Go there and make sure you follow Scott with all this good work. If you can afford it, make sure you donate. Same with here. You see everything scrolling across the bottom. If you can afford to donate, great. If you can't, it doesn't matter. Just share this video on all your social media platforms. That's what's critical. As Scott said, you got a phone, call the White House, flood their lines. Call if you've got your Senate office in your state, your local House of Representatives. Everybody, flood them with calls saying no, we don't agree with this. Also, as they said, if you know various peace organizations, right? Whoever they are, call them and say, look, guys, what are you guys doing? We need to get together. We need something in DC ASAP. We need a major march to bring millions of people in to say, no, we don't want to die in a fiery nuclear blast. So thanks a lot, everybody. As I said, follow Scott, follow me, subscribe to this. And thanks a lot, everybody. Scott, thanks a lot. Any final words?
No, just say no to nuclear war. I mean, I just have to laugh. I shouldn't read the comments, but
yeah, I do it too. So don't.
I mean, I'm sitting there looking at it, and y'all just. I mean, you don't have to support what we say 100%, but there's so many people out there that are treating this with less than the seriousness it needs to be treated. And thank God we have enough people who do take it seriously, and we'll save your ass too.
Yeah,
when we stop nuclear war, we're going to save your ass too. But, man, you're not making it easy. All right.
All right. Thanks a lot. All right, everybody, share it right now. X, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram, you name it. 5,000 and some people need to share this video ASAP. Thanks a lot. We're out.